Section A. Directions. In this section, you will hear 3 news reports. At the end of each news report, you will hear 2 or 3 questions. Both the news report and the questions will be spoken only once. After you hear a question, you must choose the best answer from the 4 choices marked A, B, C, and D. Then, mark the corresponding letter on answer sheet 1 with a single line through the center.
Questions 1 and 2 will be based on the following news item. 11 Taliban fighters attacked an important airport in southern Afghanistan earlier Tuesday, killing at least 50 people, Afghan officials say. The Afghan Defense Ministry said 38 civilians, 10 soldiers, and 2 police officers were killed. The attack on the Kandahar airfield lasted 20 hours, reported the Washington Post. Among the dead were women and children, the newspaper wrote. The airport includes a military base with troops from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. There were no reports that NATO troops were killed or injured in the attack. A spokesman for the Taliban says fighters entered the base and attacked local and foreign military troops. He said more than 150 soldiers were killed in the attack. The Taliban often makes claims about the results of their attacks that are not true. Taliban attacks have grown in number and strength in Afghanistan this year after the withdrawal last year of combat troops from other countries.
Question 1. What is the news report mainly about?
Question 2. What might cause the growth of Taliban attacks in Afghanistan?
Questions 3 and 4 will be based on the following news item. Saudi Arabia says it is ready to pump more crude oil in a bid to stabilize prices that have been hitting record highs. The Saudi Deputy Oil Minister, Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, says Riyadh is prepared to meet the demands of its customers. His comments Saturday came a day before the world's major oil producers and consumers are together in Saudi Arabia for talks on the dramatic rise in crude oil prices. Saudi Arabia called for Sunday's meeting in Jeddah to address an energy crisis that has caused social and economic turmoil around the world. The Saudis are expected to formally announce plans at the meeting to increase oil production by 200,000 barrels a day in July. But the head of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, of which Saudi Arabia is a key member, has said increasing oil production is illogical. OPEC President Chakib Khalil said Friday that oil prices have been driven up by speculation and geopolitical tension. Question 3. What do we learn about Saudi Arabia from the news report?
Question 4. According to OPEC President Chakib Khalil, what caused the rise in crude oil prices? Questions 5 to 7 will be based on the following news item. Nowadays, there is a growing awareness of the problem of a rapidly increasing world population. This problem of a rising world population is largely the result of improved medical skills, which have lowered the death rate and, at the same time, raised the birth rate by increasing live births and the number of babies who survive early childhood. There is a growing realization that food production cannot keep pace with these increases, the result of which is that in some countries people are already starving to death, while many millions more suffer from malnutrition. This problem is further complicated by the fact that in places like America and Europe, we obtain by trade and consume far more food and resources like oil than, say, the average Indian, thus leaving even less for the people in the underdeveloped areas to survive on. World population is rising at a rate of 2% a year. This means an addition of 70 million people a year to the present population of more than 3,500 million. There are striking regional differences in the population growth trends. The fastest growing region is Latin America, which includes South and Central America and the Caribbean, while Africa and Asia closely follow Latin America. However, the largest absolute addition to the world population is in Asia, which at present contains about 3/5 of the people of the world.
Question 5. Which is one of the results of improved medical skills?
Question 6. At what rate is the world population increasing per year?
Question 7. Which of the second fastest growing region in the world in terms of population? Section B. Directions. In this section, you will hear 2 long conversations. At the end of each conversation, you will hear 4 questions. Both the conversation and the questions will be spoken only once. After you hear a question, you must choose the best answer from the 4 choices marked A, B, C, and D. Then, mark the corresponding letter on answer sheet 1 with a single line through the center. Conversation 1. I really have no idea what to do during this summer holiday. I can't bear to just sit around, and there seem to be no jobs available.
Why don't you try house sitting? Last summer, my friend Tom house sat for the Alexanders when they went away on vacation. Mr. Alexander hired Tom to stay in their house because he didn't want it left empty.
You mean the Alexanders paid Tom just to live in their house?
It certainly wasn't that easy. He had to mow the lawn and water the houseplants, and also feed the pets. And when Boris house sat for Mr. Alexander, he had to help him with his farm.
I heard about babysitting, and house-sitting sounds just like it, except you're taking care of a house instead of children. It may be a suitable job for me.
The Student Employment Office still has a few jobs posted.
Do I just have to fill out an application form?
Yes, and Tom and Boris had to interview with the homeowners and provide 3 references each.
That seems like a lot of trouble for a summer job.
Well, the homeowners want some guarantee that they can trust the house sitter. You know, they want to make sure you're not the type who'll throw wild parties in their house or move a group of friends in with you.
House sitters who do that sort of thing probably aren't paid then.
Usually they're paid anyway just because the homeowners don't want to make a fuss. But if the homeowner reported it, then the house sitter wouldn't be able to get another job. So why don't you give it a try?
Yeah, I think I will. Questions 8 to 11 are based on the conversation you have just heard.
Question 8. What does the man want to do this summer?
Question 9. What did the Alexanders do when they went away on holiday last summer?
Question 10. What is one responsibility the house sitter probably wouldn't have?
Question 11. How do homeowners determine the reliability of a house sitter? Conversation 2.
Hi, Kevin. Your roommate told me that I could find you here. What are you doing here?
What does it look like I am doing?
Well, it looks like you are watching television. But we have a math test tomorrow, so I thought you'd be studying for it, and maybe I can study with you.
Oh, well, I was just taking a break. This equation stuff gives me a headache if I work on it too long.
I know what you mean. I've been working on it for 3 hours already. I'm beginning to go over. I just don't get some of them.
But I can't believe you are coming to me. I mean, you do know what I got on the last test, don't you?
Yeah, I know. You told me. I just thought 2 heads might be better than 1.
Yeah, that's nice idea. But, you know, I wish I knew that person in our class who got a full score on the last test. She didn't miss a question. Was it Elizabeth?
Oh yeah, Elizabeth. She is a friend of mine. She'd be a big help right now. Why don't I give her a call?
What? At this hour? It's already 10:30. I don't want to impose on her.
Yeah, I guess you are right. But you know what? She owes me a big favor. Let's at least give her a call and see what she says. Maybe going over some of the problems with us would help her review the material.
It's worth a try. Questions 12 to 15 are based on the conversation you have just heard.
Question 12. What are the speakers mainly discussing?
Question 13. Why is the man watching television?
Question 14. Why is the man surprised that the woman wants to study linear algebra with him?
Question 15. What makes the woman want to call Elizabeth? Section C. Directions. In this section, you will hear 3 passages. At the end of each passage, you will hear some questions. Both the passage and the questions will be spoken only once. After you hear a question, you must choose the best answer from the 4 choices marked A, B, C, and D. Then, mark the corresponding letter on answer sheet 1 with a single line through the center. Passage 1. In this lesson, I will talk about the history of the White House. At first, most Americans didn't think there was anything particularly special about the White House. Few had ever seen it or had any idea what it looked like, and even the families who lived there found it completely inadequate. When it was built, the White House was the largest house in the country, and it remained so until after the Civil War. But it served so many different purposes that little of it was available for First Family to actually live in. The first floor, or State Floor, was made up entirely of public rooms, and the president's offices, which were staffed by as many as 30 employees, took half of the second floor. The First Family had to get by with the 8 or fewer second-floor rooms that were left. By Lincoln's time, the situation was intolerable. The White House was open to visitors, office seekers, cheaters, and the merely curious had no difficulty making their way upstairs to the official rooms from the first floor. Lincoln was so uncomfortable with the situation that he had a private corridor constructed. He also received $20,000 to improve the furnishings of the White House. The new furnishings did not last for more than a few years. When Lincoln was assassinated in 1865, the White House fell into disorder. No one really supervised the White House during the first 5 weeks. Mrs. Lincoln lay mourning in her room, and others helped themselves. Questions 16 to 18 are based on the passage you have just heard.
Question 16. How did Americans feel towards the White House in the beginning?
Question 17. Why was the White House in disorder during Lincoln's time?
Question 18. What happened after the White House was renovated, according to the speaker? Passage 2. Last week, we discussed the early development of railroads in the United States. Today, I want to mention an even earlier form of transportation, one that brought the first European settlers to America, and that's the wooden sailing ship. From colonial times, sailing ships were vital to the economy. Many coastal towns depended on fishing or whaling for employment and income. This was especially true in the northeastern states, and there the wood from nearby forests and the skills of local designers and workers also formed the basis of an important shipbuilding industry. But the big profits were to be made on trade with faraway places, and since sea captains often became part owners of their ships, They had a strong interest in the commercial success of their voyages. So these Yankees, that's what U.S. sailor and officers came to be called, they carried on a very profitable trade with other parts of the world. The high point of this trade came in the mid-19th century with the introduction of the clipper ship, the enormous Yankee clippers with huge sails reaching nearly 200 feet into the sky. He'd carry passengers and cargo from New York around South America to San Francisco in less than 3 months and clear to China in just half a year. At that time, this seemed unbelievably fast and efficient. But in the 1860s, more reliable steam-powered ships began to take over. And soon the important role of sailing ships in the U.S. economy would come to an end.
Questions 19 to 21 are based on the passage you have just heard.
Question 19. What aspect of United States history does the professor mainly discuss?
Question 20. According to the professor, what may be one reason for the success of the merchant ships of the United States?
Question 21. What does the professor say about clipper ships?
Passage 3. During the Christmas shopping rush in London, an interesting story was reported of a tramp who, apparently no fault of his own, found himself locked in a well-known chain store late on Christmas Eve. No doubt the store was crowded with last-minute Christmas shoppers, and the staff were dead beat and longing to get home. Maybe all the proper security checks were made before the store was locked, and they left to enjoy the 3-day holiday, untroubled by customers desperate to get last-minute Christmas presents. However funny that may be, our tramp found himself alone in the store and decided to make the best of it. There was food, drink, bedding, and camping equipment, of which he made good use. There must also have been television sets and radios, though it was not reported if he took advantage of these things. When the shop reopened, he was discovered in bed with a large number of empty bottles beside him. He seems to have been a man of good humor and calm character, as indeed tramps very commonly are. He gave in, cheerfully enough, to being taken away by the police. Perhaps he had had a better Christmas than usual. He was sent to prison for 7 days. The judge awarded no compensation to the chain store for the food and drink our tramp had consumed. They had, in his opinion, already received valuable free publicity from the reports the story received in the newspaper and on television. Questions 22 to 25 are based on the passage you have just heard.
Question 22. What happened to the tramp late on Christmas Eve?
Question 23. What did the tramp do when he was alone?
Question 24. When the tramp was arrested, what did he do?
Question 25. Why didn't the judge award compensation to the chain store?